My name is Madison Parker, and the message that destroyed my family arrived on an ordinary Tuesday during my lunch break. The vending machine hummed louder than usual that day. My phone buzzed once, my father's name lit up the screen, and then came the words that gutted me. "We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again." Before I could even process it, my brother reacted with a heart emoji. Just a simple heart, the kind people tap on videos of puppies, not when someone's being disowned. I stared at that heart for what felt like forever, then typed back one single line. "I'll remove my name from all the loans tomorrow." By the time midnight rolled around, the family group chat was absolutely on fire. I used to think family meant safety, that it was this unshakable foundation you could always count on. That belief carried me through years of cleaning up everyone else's disasters, of turning their panic into payment plans and their emergencies into my problems. My father, Richard, ran a small construction company that was perpetually one big contract away from finally making it. My mother, Catherine, had this gift for weaponizing guilt, soft voice, trembling hands, the whole performance. "We just need a little help, sweetheart," she'd say, and I'd cave every single time. And then there was Ryan, my older brother, the golden child who could do no wrong. Every bad decision he made came wrapped in a promise. Just until next month, he'd swear, and I'd believe him because that's what I did. I was the steady one, the problem solver, the human ATM machine they could withdraw from whenever they needed. When I turned 24, they asked me to co-sign what they called a small business loan. "It's just paperwork," Dad insisted. "You won't even notice it's there." So I signed my name on that dotted line. Then came another loan for a truck, then a line of credit for home repairs that somehow kept expanding. The word temporary became like our family's theme song, playing on repeat. Over the years, the debt stacked under my name stopped looking like help and started looking a whole lot more like shackles. From the outside, everyone saw the Parkers as this tight-knit, picture-perfect family. Sunday dinners, matching holiday sweaters, framed photos on the mantel showing us all smiling. But on the inside, I felt more like an unpaid employee whose only job was keeping the lights on and the bills paid. The family group chat became my second inbox, constantly flooded with bills, reminders, and emotional blackmail carefully disguised as gratitude. "You're such a lifesaver, Madison," they'd write. But the second I hesitated or questioned anything, it became, "After all we've done for you." That night after receiving the text, I scrolled back through months and months of messages, past all those heart emojis, crying faces, and thank you gifs. I stopped on one message from Ryan that he'd sent years ago. "You always fix everything, sis." I laughed out loud when I read it again, but the sound that came out was more like choking than laughing. I looked around my apartment at the blazer still hanging on the back of my chair, the half-eaten sandwich sitting on my desk, and I realized just how quiet peace actually sounds. I thought about Ethan, my boyfriend, and something he told me once that I'd brushed off at the time. "You don't owe love to people who treat it like a loan," he'd said. Back then, I thought he was being cynical and harsh. Now those words sounded like prophecy. I closed the chat, let out a long breath, and whispered to myself, "This time I'm done paying." 2 days before that text arrived, I'd already felt something shift beneath my feet. I was at work when a notification popped up from my credit monitoring app. Another inquiry under my name. Business loan, amount $80,000. My stomach dropped and went ice cold. I hadn't applied for anything in over a year, maybe longer. That night, I drove straight to my parents' house, not even bothering to call ahead. The porch light was on, the same one Dad always left burning for Ryan, but never seemed to remember to leave on for me. Mom opened the door wearing that soft, practiced smile she'd perfected over the years. "You should have called first, sweetheart." Inside, Dad was planted in his recliner with the TV casting blue light across his glasses. Ryan was sprawled across the couch with his phone in hand, barely bothering to glance up when I walked in. I held up my phone screen toward them. $80,000 taken out under my name. Anyone want to explain that to me? Mom blinked at me, putting on this confused act. "Oh, honey, your father just needed an extension for the business. Nothing major. The business that's been failing for 5 straight years." I cut her off. "You used my credit again without even asking me." Dad's jaw went tight and his voice got hard. Watch your tone with us. This family needed you. You're good with money. You can handle it. You mean I can handle your mess? I shot back. Ryan finally looked up from his phone, smirking like this was all some kind of joke. You're being way too dramatic about this. It's not like we're strangers here. We share blood, don't we? I stared right at him. No, Ryan, we share debt. There's a difference. The room went completely silent except for the low hum of the television. Mom pressed one hand to her chest like I'd physically wounded her. You're twisting everything around. We've sacrificed everything for you. Everything. I laughed, and it came out sharp and exhausted. No, Mom, you've spent everything. I'm just the one who paid all the bills. Dad stood up then, his voice rising. Don't you dare come into this house blaming us for your own selfish choices. You think moving in with that boyfriend of yours makes you better than your own family? Something inside me broke right then, clean and final. I felt all those years of guilt, of being the dependable daughter, snap like an overstretched wire finally giving out. You know what? I said quietly. I'm done with this. Ryan scoffed at me. Done with what exactly? Done carrying you? I said all of you. I'm done with all of you. Mom's eyes instantly filled with tears right on cue, like she'd been waiting for her moment. How can you say something like that to your own family? Because it's the truth, I replied. I turned and headed for the door, and behind me I heard Dad mutter under his breath, ungrateful. That single word hit me the same way it always had, like a stamp sealing a contract I never actually agreed to sign. The next day during my lunch break, his message came through. We're cutting all ties. Don't come around ever again. 5 minutes later, Ryan reacted to it with a heart emoji. I sat there staring at the screen, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, burnt coffee taste still on my tongue. I didn't feel anger anymore, just this crystal clear clarity. I typed my response slow and deliberate. I'll pull my name from all the loans tomorrow. Then I locked my phone, leaned back in my chair, and just listened to the vending machine hum in the break room. By midnight, the family chat had turned into absolute chaos. All caps, accusations flying, guilt trips, voice messages piling up. But I didn't answer a single one. I closed my laptop, drew in one long breath, and thought to myself, they think they've punished me, but they just set me free. By the next morning, my phone looked like a crime scene. Dozens of missed calls, texts written in all capital letters, voicemails from every single family member. The group chat was still exploding with messages. Mom, you're tearing this family apart. Dad, you're going to regret this decision. Ryan, hope your boyfriend knows he's next on your list to cut off. I didn't open a single message. Instead, I made myself coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened up my laptop. The glow from the screen felt like a shield protecting me. I typed out an email to my bank. I would like to begin the process of removing myself as co-signer on all active accounts associated with my family. Then I wrote another email to the insurance company, another to the credit bureau. My fingers moved steady and mechanical. Every single click was an act of reclaiming what was mine. Every form I filled out was a quiet act of defiance. The printer behind me started humming to life. Page after page slid out. Loan contracts, account statements, credit histories going back years. I grabbed a yellow highlighter and marked every line where my signature appeared, then organized everything into labeled folders. The air in my apartment smelled like hot paper and fresh ink, like something being purified by fire. At work later, Nora peeked over the cubicle wall at me. Rough day? I smiled, but it was thin. Just fixing some paperwork. She tilted her head, studying my face. You look calmer than I've ever seen you look before. Yeah, I said. I think I finally stopped drowning. That evening, Ethan found me sitting, cross-legged on the living room floor, completely surrounded by folders and papers. He crouched down beside me, reading the labels I'd written. Loan release, cosigner removal, account closure. They're going to hate you for doing this, he said softly. They already hate me, I replied without looking up. He reached over and touched my hand gently. You don't have to do this alone, you know. I know, I said, but I need to be the one who ends it. The next day, I met with a loan officer at the downtown bank branch. His office was quiet, air conditioning whispering softly in the background. I slid the thick folder across his desk toward him. I'd like to remove myself from every single loan under the Parker family business and personal accounts. He skimmed through the papers, his eyebrows lifting higher with each page. That's quite an extensive list you've got here. I know, I said. It might take a few days to process everything. The process isn't exactly simple. I've done harder things, I told him. He studied me for a long moment, really looking at me. You absolutely sure about this? Families can be complicated. Families can ruin you too, I said. The sound of his stamp hitting the papers echoed in that small office like a judge's gavel coming down. For just a second, I closed my eyes and listened to that sound. It didn't sound like loss to me. It sounded like freedom. That night, I drove home through steady rain. The windshield wipers kept a rhythm that matched my pulse. My phone buzzed in the passenger seat. Mom's name lighting up the screen, then Dad, then Ryan. I turned the phone face down and let it ring itself out. When I finally pulled into my parking lot, the city lights were reflecting off the wet pavement like pieces of broken glass scattered everywhere. I sat there for a while with the engine ticking as it cooled, thinking about every single version of myself that had said yes when she desperately wanted to say no. Inside, the apartment smelled like coffee and wet asphalt drifting up from outside. I dropped the folders onto the kitchen counter, poured myself a tall glass of water, and felt the smallest flicker of genuine peace. The texts kept coming in, but they didn't sound like commands anymore. They sounded like static, like white noise I could finally tune out. A few days passed before the real fallout started. I was standing in line at the grocery store when my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered it. Is this Madison Parker? A woman's voice, professional and cold. This is her. This is Linda calling from Parker Construction regarding overdue payments on account, ending in 7421. I'm calling to inform you that we'll be pursuing collection. I felt my chest tighten for just a moment before I remembered. I'm no longer associated with that account. I removed myself as co-signer. There was a pause on the line. We have you listed as primary. That's incorrect, I said firmly. Contact my attorney if you need documentation. I gave her the number and hung up before she could respond. My hands shook slightly as I loaded groceries onto the conveyor belt, but my voice in my head stayed calm and steady. They can't touch you anymore. That evening, Ethan ordered Thai food and we ate it straight from the containers on the couch. He could tell something had happened, but he waited for me to speak first. They called me today, I finally said. Debt collectors. He set down his container. What did you tell them? That I'm not responsible anymore. His smile was proud. Good. I leaned into him, feeling the weight of the day settle. For years, I thought saying no made me a bad person. Now I know it just makes me free. The next week brought more attempts to pull me back in. Mom showed up at my office building. Security called me down to the lobby, and there she was, sitting in one of those uncomfortable waiting chairs, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Honey, she said when she saw me, standing up too quickly. We need to talk about this. I'm at work, Mom. It'll only take a minute, please. She opened the folder and pulled out papers, copies of some of the same loan documents I'd signed years ago. We spoke to a lawyer, she said, her voice taking on that familiar pleading tone. He says you might still be partially liable. There are some loopholes, but if you just cooperate with us, we can fix this whole mess. I stared at her, really seeing her for maybe the first time. You went through my personal files to get those copies. She hesitated, her fingers tightening on the folder. We kept copies from back when you still lived at home, just in case we ever needed them. The world seemed to tilt sideways. That's not just invasive, I said slowly. That's actually illegal. Her face hardened then, the mask slipping. Don't be so dramatic about everything, Madison. You're making this so much harder than it needs to be. I laughed, and it came out sharp enough to cut. You mean harder than you need it to be. I stood up from the lobby chair. We're done here, Mom. She reached for my arm, her grip desperate. You can't keep doing this to us. I already did, I said, pulling away. I walked toward the elevators and didn't look back. My hands were shaking as the elevator doors closed, but the voice in my head stayed strong and clear. They can't touch you anymore. That night, I changed every single password I had. Bank accounts, email, credit monitoring, everything. Every door they'd ever had a key to, I locked them out completely. The following week, an eerie silence fell over everything. No phone calls, no text messages, even the group chat went completely dead. For a while, it felt too quiet, like that strange pause right before a storm hits. Then the storm finally arrived in my inbox, an email from a law firm with one of those names designed to intimidate, Miller and Hastings Legal Group. The subject line read, "Notice of Potential Financial Obligation." I opened it and skimmed through. Pages of vague legal language. No real details, just barely enough to scare someone who didn't know better. I smiled to myself. My attorney had already confirmed weeks ago that everything was finalized and legally airtight. They had absolutely nothing left to stand on. I hit reply and typed out one single line. There will be no further contact. Then I clicked send and felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. That night, Ethan and I toasted with cheap wine from the corner store. "To the end of all the chaos," he said, raising his glass. "To the beginning of peace," I answered, clinking my glass against his. For the first time in my entire life, I actually believed those words. But peace doesn't always announce itself with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it comes disguised as fallout, as consequences, as other people's reactions. About a week later, a cousin I barely remembered messaged me on social media. "Hey, your mom's really worried about you. She says you're going through something and struggling." Then a woman from our old church texted me out of nowhere. "Saw your dad at the grocery store yesterday. He mentioned you're dealing with some instability. Everyone at church is praying for you." I actually laughed out loud when I read that, really laughed. The same people who had labeled me as selfish and ungrateful were now trying to paint me as mentally unstable and broken. I blocked every single one of them without a second thought. That night, lying in bed beside Ethan, something clicked into place in my mind. They couldn't hurt me financially anymore, so now they were trying to rewrite the entire story, to make me the villain in their narrative. But even that strategy failed because the people who actually mattered, the ones who really knew me, they knew the truth. I turned toward Ethan in the darkness and whispered, "They lost their hold on me." He brushed his thumb gently across my cheek. "Then stop looking back at them." So I did exactly that. The next morning, sunlight poured into our bedroom through the open curtains. My phone buzzed one final time with a message from an unknown number. "We saw you featured on the company website. Congratulations on your promotion. We're really glad you're doing well." There was no name attached, but I knew exactly who it was from. I deleted the message without even opening the photo they'd attached, and that's the moment when I felt it completely and fully, the total absence of fear. Not anger, not a desire for revenge, just pure, untainted peace. Winter slowly turned into early spring before I even noticed that the quiet had stopped feeling strange and foreign. Mornings came soft and slow, the way they're actually supposed to when you're not constantly bracing for disaster. I'd wake up before my alarm went off, brew a fresh pot of coffee, and just listen to the sounds of the city waking up around me. No buzzing phone demanding my attention. No knot of anxiety twisting up my stomach. My paycheck actually stretched the entire month for the first time in years. It felt almost foreign, weirdly guilty even, to have money that belonged only to me and nobody else. Several weeks passed before I heard through a mutual contact, my Aunt Patricia, who loved playing the role of family messenger, that the Parker house was officially listed for sale in pre-foreclosure. She texted me a link like she was just passing along harmless gossip instead of news about financial ruin. I clicked on it anyway, curious despite myself. Photos of empty rooms, peeling wallpaper, and a crooked for sale sign planted in their front yard filled my screen. I waited for the guilt to come crashing down on me like a wave. It never did. What I felt instead was something gentler and quieter, a kind of mourning for the person I used to be, the daughter who genuinely believed that love meant constantly rescuing people who refused to even try to swim on their own. That evening, Ethan found me sitting on the couch with my laptop still open to the real estate listing. "They're losing the house," I said without looking up. He sat down beside me and gently took the laptop from my hands, closing it. "It's not your job to save what they built on your back," he said. I looked at him then. "It's just, that house was everything to them." "And it was nothing to you," he said softly but firmly. Later that night, while I was brushing my teeth and getting ready for bed, an old memory surfaced without warning. Dad writing, "You keep us all together" on a birthday card when I turned 16. Back then, those words felt like the highest praise, like I was special and important. Now they felt more like a warning I should have heeded. Glue doesn't last forever when you keep stretching it too thin. Eventually, it just cracks and fails. A few days later, another email arrived in my inbox. This one from my mother. The subject line simply said, "Please read." The tone was almost tender, carefully constructed to pull at my heartstrings. She wrote that Dad's health was declining, that they just needed a little bit of help to get back on their feet one more time. She ended the email with, "You're all we have left, Madison." For just a moment, I almost hit reply. That old reflex kicked in hard, the urge to fix everything, to heal and rescue and save. But I stopped myself, my finger hovering over the keyboard. Instead, I opened a new browser tab and donated the exact amount she'd asked for to a nonprofit organization that helped women escape financial abuse. Then I went back and deleted her email without responding. When I told Ethan what I'd done, he smiled at me with something that looked like pride. "You didn't destroy them," he said. "You just stopped saving them." I nodded, breathing in the quiet stillness of our apartment. And that's the only kind of revenge that actually lasts. The next weekend, we walked through a park lined with trees that were just starting to bloom. The air smelled like approaching rain mixed with lilac. Blossoms. I watched sunlight spilling through the branches above us, dappling the path ahead, and for the first time in years, I wasn't sitting there waiting for the next crisis to explode. I wasn't the glue holding everything together anymore. I was the clean break. Spring settled in quietly and gently, the way peace does when it finally stops asking for permission to exist. The windows in our apartment stayed open most days, letting in fresh air. The smell of coffee and rain mixed perfectly with the steady hum of traffic flowing below. Ethan would cook breakfast while I answered work emails from our little balcony with sunlight warming my hands. It wasn't extravagant or fancy, but it was completely ours. Paid for with money that came with no guilt attached whatsoever. Sometimes I'd catch myself listening for that familiar sound, the chime of my phone announcing some new crisis that needed my immediate attention. It never came anymore, and that silence, the kind that used to absolutely terrify me, had somehow transformed into proof that I'd finally broken the pattern for good. One night, as the city lights blinked on one by one like soft stars, Ethan asked me a question. "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about it for a long moment before answering honestly. I miss who I kept trying to be for them, but I don't miss them. He smiled at that. "Then you're finally free." I looked out at the skyline stretching before us and whispered quietly to myself, "Sometimes peace costs everything you thought was love, but it's always worth the price." If you've ever had to walk away from people who kept you small just so you could feel whole again, just know you're not alone in that experience. Share your story in the comments below and make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story that reminds you that sometimes the quietest form of revenge is simply living well.
I was 12 when Dad first told me I wasn't leadership material. We were at dinner. One of those formal Sunday meals where Dad held court about business while Mom nodded approvingly and my older brother Jason absorbed every word like gospel. "Leadership is innate," Dad announced, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "You either have the instinct or you don't. It can't be taught." Jason, 16 and already insufferable, agreed immediately. "That's why some people are born to lead and others are born to follow." Dad smiled at him. "Exactly right, son. You understand." I'd asked a simple question about why our family company, Sterling Industries, had lost a major contract that month. I'd read about it in the business section. Something Dad didn't know I did religiously. "That's complex business strategy, Rebecca," Dad said dismissively. "Not something you need to worry about. Focus on your schoolwork." But the article said the client switched because of outdated production methods. Rebecca. His voice went cold. The boardroom isn't a place for children's opinions. When you're older, you'll understand that business requires a certain caliber of thinking. The implication was clear. I didn't have it. Mom patted my hand. Sweetheart, not everyone is cut out for high-level management. There's no shame in finding a nice stable career. Something administrative, maybe. We can't all be like your father and Jason. I was 12. And I learned to keep my observations to myself. Sterling Industries was a third-generation manufacturing company specializing in industrial components. My grandfather built it from nothing in 1958. By the time I was born, it employed 800 people and generated about $200 million in annual revenue. Dad became CEO when I was 8 after Grandpa's death. Jason was being groomed as heir apparent from birth. Literally. There are photos of him as a toddler sitting in Grandpa's office chair wearing a tiny suit. I was an afterthought. The second child. The daughter. The one who asked too many questions and didn't have executive presence. Jason went to Princeton. I went to State University because Dad said private school was an investment in future leaders, and I should be practical about career expectations. Jason majored in business with a minor in economics. I majored in industrial engineering with a minor in finance. Jason barely passed. I graduated summa cum laude. At his graduation, Dad threw a party at the country club. At mine, I got a card with a $50 gift certificate to Olive Garden. Jason joined Sterling Industries immediately as Assistant Vice President of Operations, a title Dad created for him. I applied for an entry-level position in production planning. Dad rejected my application. It would look like nepotism, he explained over the phone. You need to build experience elsewhere first. Earn your place. Jason had literally never worked anywhere else. I got a job at Brennan Manufacturing, one of Sterling's competitors. Started as a junior production analyst making $42,000 a year. I worked 60-hour weeks, learned every aspect of manufacturing operations and made myself indispensable. Within 18 months I was promoted to senior analyst. Within 3 years, production manager. By year 5, I was director of operations making $140,000 and managing a $50 million production budget. I was good at my job. Really good. I could see inefficiencies others missed. Identify cost-saving opportunities. Streamline processes. Improve quality metrics. My innovations saved Brennan $8 million in my first 3 years. Meanwhile, Jason was running Sterling Industries into the ground. He wasn't incompetent exactly, he was worse. He was confidently mediocre. He'd inherited Dad's arrogance without any of the business acumen that had made Grandpa successful. I watched from the outside as Sterling lost market share. As employee turnover increased. As profit margins shrank. As longtime clients quietly switched to competitors like Brennan. The industry publications were brutal. Sterling Industries struggling to adapt to modern manufacturing demands. Once dominant player losing ground to more agile competitors. Questions about leadership succession at family-owned manufacturer. Dad and Jason blamed external factors. The economy. Foreign competition. Shifting market conditions. Never their own decisions. I said nothing. I wasn't part of Sterling Industries. My opinions weren't wanted. But I watched. And I planned. When I was 29, I did something that would change everything. Sterling Industries was publicly traded. Had been since Grandpa took it public in 1985. But Dad's family maintained controlling interest through ownership of 51% of shares. The remaining 49% was held by various institutional and private investors. It was a closely held stock, not heavily traded. Most shareholders were long-term investors who'd held positions for decades. I'd been investing aggressively since my first job. Living below my means. Maxing out retirement accounts. Building a diversified portfolio. By age 29, I had $380,000 in liquid assets. I used every penny to start buying Sterling Industries stock. I bought slowly. Small lots purchased through different brokerage accounts. Never enough volume to trigger attention. Never in patterns that would show up on trading reports that Dad or Jason might actually read, which they didn't. Sterling's stock was undervalued due to poor performance. Shares that had traded at $85 10 years earlier were now at $34. The market had lost confidence in Dad's leadership. But I knew something the market didn't. Sterling had incredible bones. Great facilities. Loyal workforce. Strong client relationships that could be rebuilt. Valuable patents. Prime real estate. The company wasn't failing because of bad fundamentals. It was failing because of bad leadership. I bought 50,000 shares over 18 months. Cost me everything I had and required taking out a margin loan. I was leveraged to the breaking point. Then I waited. And I kept working at Brennan, kept excelling, kept building my reputation in the industry. By 31, I was vice president of operations at Brennan, making $220,000 a year. I'd been featured in Manufacturing Today magazine as one of the industry's rising leaders under 35. I'd spoken at conferences, built relationships with industry analysts, institutional investors, and manufacturing executives across the country. None of my family attended my speaking engagements. I don't think they even knew about them. During this time, I quietly made friends with Sterling's institutional shareholders. Large investment funds that owned significant blocks of stock. I attended shareholder meetings which were open to any shareholder, and sat in the back saying nothing, just observing. I watched Dad and Jason present quarterly results with increasing desperation as numbers continued declining. I watched shareholders ask pointed questions that neither could answer satisfactorily. I watched confidence erode. When I was 32, the opportunity arrived. Sterling's board initiated a leadership review. Performance had been declining for 7 consecutive quarters. The stock price had dropped another 30%. Major shareholders were getting vocal about wanting change. The board, which included 3 family members and 4 outside directors, met to discuss CEO succession planning. Dad was 68. Transition was inevitable. Jason was the presumptive successor. He'd been VP of operations for 10 years. He was family. He was Dad's chosen heir. But the outside directors were skeptical. They'd watched Jason's performance. They'd seen the continued decline. They wanted alternatives. The board commissioned an executive search firm to identify potential CEO candidates, both internal and external. That's when I made my move. Through a trusted intermediary, a former colleague who now worked in executive search, I let it be known that I might be interested in leadership opportunities in the manufacturing sector. My resume was impressive. VP of operations at a $400 million company at age 32. Track record of operational excellence. Industry recognition. Proven turnaround experience. The search firm approached me. Would you be interested in the CEO position at Sterling Industries? Sterling. I said, feigning surprise. That's my family's company. We're aware. Would that be a problem? Not for me, but it might be for them. The board is committed to selecting the best candidate regardless of family politics. Are you interested? Send me the details. I interviewed with the board search committee. 3 outside directors, none of whom recognized me. I'd been excluded from family business for so long that even the board members didn't know what I looked like. I presented a detailed turnaround plan. Specific strategies for improving operational efficiency, modernizing production, rebuilding client relationships, and returning to profitability. This analysis is remarkably insightful, one director said. You seem to understand Sterling's weaknesses intimately. I've followed the company for years, I replied. And I've competed against them professionally. I know where they're vulnerable and where they're strong. The current leadership team would need to be restructured, another director noted, including the CEO's son who currently serves as VP of operations. Any leadership team should be evaluated purely on merit and performance, I said carefully. Family relationships shouldn't protect incompetence or prevent excellence. They loved that answer. I interviewed with the full board. Dad wasn't present. Conflict of interest during his own succession planning. Jason wasn't included, he was under evaluation himself. I presented my vision for Sterling Industries 2.0. Modernization. Efficiency. Innovation. Growth. You're young, one family board member said doubtfully. Only 32. The CEO role requires gravitas. I'm the same age your founder was when he started this company, I replied. And I've already proven I can run operations at scale. Age is less relevant than capability. The board deliberated for 3 weeks. During that time, I had quiet conversations with the institutional shareholders I'd been cultivating relationships with. I owned 50,000 shares personally, but several funds collectively owned another 800,000 shares. If I were CEO, I told them, Sterling would return to profitability within 18 months. I'd modernize operations, cut waste, rebuild market position. Your investment would recover. They were listening. The board vote was close, 4-3 in my favor. The 4 outside directors voted for me. The 3 family members voted for Jason. But majority ruled. I was offered the position of CEO of Sterling Industries. I accepted. The press release went out on a Wednesday morning. Sterling Industries announces new CEO, Rebecca Sterling Morrison, to lead manufacturing turnaround. My phone exploded with calls from Dad, Jason, Mom, various relatives. I ignored all of them. The board scheduled a formal announcement for Friday, a shareholders meeting where I'd be introduced as the new chairman and CEO, where I'd present my strategic vision, and where the transition would be made official. I told no one in my family that I'd be there. On Friday morning, I received a call from Dad. Rebecca, you need to withdraw from this CEO position. Good morning, Dad. I'm well, thanks for asking. This isn't funny. You're embarrassing the family. Jason is supposed to take over Sterling. That's been the plan for 30 years. Plans change when performance doesn't meet expectations. You went behind our backs. You manipulated the board. I interviewed for a position I was qualified for. The board selected the candidate they felt was best suited to lead the company. That's how meritocracy works. You have no right. I have every right. I'm a shareholder. I'm a qualified executive. I'm family whether you've acknowledged it or not. And I'm the board's choice. If you do this, you're out of the family. Completely. No inheritance. No relationship. Nothing. Dad, you cut me out of the family when I was 12 years old. You've just never made it official until now. I accept your terms. I hung up. That afternoon, I went to Sterling Industries headquarters for the first time in 23 years. Not as a rejected daughter. As chairman and CEO. The shareholders' meeting was held in the main conference center. About 100 people attended, board members, major shareholders, company executives, media representatives. Dad and Jason were already there, sitting in the front row with Mom and several other family members. They looked confident. Smug even. They didn't know I was the new CEO. The press release had said Rebecca Sterling Morrison, my married name. They'd never connected it to me. I stood in the back of the room as the board chairman, William Hartley, called the meeting to order. Thank you all for attending today's special shareholders meeting, he began. As you know, Sterling Industries has been undergoing a leadership transition. After extensive evaluation, the board has selected a new chairman and CEO to guide our company forward. Dad was smiling slightly. He thought Jason was about to be announced. Our new leader brings extensive manufacturing experience, proven operational excellence, and deep understanding of our industry, William continued. Please join me in welcoming Sterling Industries' new chairman and CEO. I started walking toward the front. Rebecca Sterling Morrison. The room erupted in applause. Dad's smile vanished. His face went white. Jason's mouth literally fell open. Mom gasped audibly. I walked to the podium with my head high, wearing a navy suit that cost more than Dad's car payment. Confident. Professional. Prepared. William shook my hand warmly. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you, William. I'm honored by the board's confidence. I turned to face the room. Made eye contact with Dad. Jason. Mom. Then I looked past them to the shareholders, the executives, the future. Good afternoon, I said. For those who don't know me, I'm Rebecca Sterling Morrison. My grandfather founded this company 67 years ago. I've spent the past 14 years building expertise in manufacturing operations, most recently as VP of Operations at Brennan Manufacturing. I'm here today because I love this company, I understand its potential, and I'm committed to restoring Sterling Industries to industry leadership. Dad stood up abruptly. This is inappropriate. The board can't just. Mr. Sterling, William interrupted firmly, you're no longer CEO. Please sit down or leave the meeting. Dad's face turned purple. But he sat. I continued with my presentation. Detailed analysis of Sterling's current challenges. Specific strategies for improvement. Timelines. Metrics. Goals. The shareholders were engaged, asking intelligent questions. I answered every one with specificity and confidence. After 40 minutes I concluded. Sterling Industries' best days aren't behind us. They're ahead of us. Under my leadership we'll modernize, innovate, and compete. Thank you. Strong applause. Several shareholders approached afterward to introduce themselves and express support. Dad, Jason, and Mom remained seated, looking stunned. Finally, as the room cleared, Dad approached me. Rebecca, we need to talk. Do we? You can't do this. You're destroying everything Jason was meant to inherit. Jason was meant to inherit a company he'd successfully run. He hasn't. The board recognized that. I'm the solution. Your family, Mom said, her voice breaking. How could you do this to your brother? How could you do what you did to me? I replied quietly. Dismiss me. Exclude me. Tell me I wasn't leadership material. Refuse to hire me. Never acknowledge my achievements. Make me feel worthless for 32 years. We never said you were worthless, Dad protested. You said it every day. In every decision. Every exclusion. Every dismissal. You just never used the actual word. Jason found his voice. You're stealing my inheritance. I'm not stealing anything. I earned this position. The board chose me based on merit. Something neither of you understand. The family won't accept this, Dad said. The family doesn't have a choice. I'm the chairman. And as of this morning, with stock purchases finalized this week, I own 18% of the company personally, making me the second largest individual shareholder after your family trust. Dad's eyes widened. You've been buying stock? For years. Quietly. Wiggly. I believed in Sterling's potential even when leadership didn't. Now I have both the authority and the ownership stake to fix what you broke. What happens now? Mom asked. Now. I start on Monday. I'll be reviewing all executive positions for performance and fit. Those who aren't meeting standards will be transitioned out. Jason went pale. You're firing me? I'm evaluating you. The same way I'd evaluate any executive. If you can demonstrate value and competence, there may be a role for you. If not. I shrugged. There are other opportunities in the world. This is family betrayal, Dad said bitterly. No, Dad. This is business. The thing you always said I didn't understand. Turns out I understand it better than you do. I picked up my portfolio. I have meetings to prepare for. Enjoy the rest of your day. I walked away from them. Heard Mom crying. Heard Jason swearing. Heard Dad making angry phone calls. I didn't look back. Monday morning I arrived at Sterling Industries at 6:30 a.m. My office, the CEO's suite that had been Dad's, had been prepared over the weekend. I spent the first week in individual meetings with every department head. Asked questions. Listened. Took notes. The employees were wary at first. Then cautiously hopeful. Then genuinely excited. You actually understand the production floor, one manager said with amazement. Your father never set foot in manufacturing. That's because I started my career there, I replied. I know how things really work. I reviewed Jason's performance over his 10-year tenure. It was worse than I'd thought. Cost overruns. Missed deadlines. Poor vendor relationships. Low employee morale in operations. I called him into my office on Friday of my first week. Jason, I've completed my evaluation of the operations division. He sat stiffly, defensively. And? Your performance hasn't met standards. The division has declined significantly under your leadership. I'm restructuring operations and your position is being eliminated. You're firing me. I'm eliminating a redundant role and reallocating resources. You'll receive 6 months severance and outplacement support. Dad will never forgive you. Dad doesn't run this company anymore. I do. He left without another word. Over the next 6 months I transformed Sterling Industries. Modernized production systems. Renegotiated supplier contracts. Rebuilt relationships with lost clients. Improved quality control. Invested in employee training. Cut waste ruthlessly. I worked 80-hour weeks. Lived at the office. Proved myself every single day. The numbers told the story. Quarter 1. Operating losses reduced by 35% Quarter 2. Return to profitability Quarter 3. Revenue up 12% Quarter 4. Profit margins at highest level in 8 years. The stock price recovered from $28 to $52. Industry publications that had written Sterling's obituary now featured our turnaround as a case study. Sterling Industries' remarkable revival under new leadership. How Rebecca Sterling Morrison saved her family's company. The CEO who came home to fix what others broke. My parents didn't attend the annual shareholder meeting where I presented year-one results to standing applause. Jason took a job at a small manufacturing firm in another state. We don't speak. Mom sends occasional emails. I miss you. Can we talk? Please call. I don't respond. Dad sent one letter 6 months after I took over. I opened it. Rebecca, I was wrong about you. I see that now. You've accomplished what I couldn't. The company is thriving. I'm proud of you even if I never showed it properly. Is there any chance we could meet for dinner? Dad. I filed the letter away. Didn't respond. Maybe someday. But not now. Not when I'm proud of you only came after I succeeded in spite of them. Not when the relationship only mattered once I had something they couldn't dismiss. I'm 34 now. Sterling Industries is profitable, growing, and competitive. We've won back major clients. Hired excellent people. Innovated continuously. Last month, we acquired one of our competitors, Brennan Manufacturing, where I'd built my early career. The executive team there had declined and their board approached me about a merger. I bought them. Integrated them. Strengthened our market position. Sometimes I walk through the manufacturing floor and remember being 12 years old, asking questions that Dad dismissed. Sometimes I sit in the CEO's office and remember applying for entry-level jobs that Dad rejected. Sometimes I attend board meetings and remember the family dinners where I was told leadership couldn't be taught and I simply didn't have the instinct. And I smile. Because they were wrong about all of it. Leadership can absolutely be taught. I taught myself while they weren't paying attention. The instinct for business? I had it all along. They just refused to see it. Management material? I'm running the company they almost destroyed. My desk has a photo from Grandpa's office. Him standing in front of Sterling Industries' original facility in 1958, when it was just a small warehouse and big dreams. Under it, I placed a plaque with his favorite quote, "Success is the best response to those who doubt you." He knew what it took to build something from nothing. He would have been proud. And unlike my parents, I think he would have seen my potential all along. The intercom buzzes. My assistant's voice. "Miss Sterling Morrison, the board is ready for the quarterly review." "Thank you, Patricia. I'll be right there." I stand, straighten my jacket, pick up my presentation materials. 23 years ago they told me I'd never run this company. Today I'm its chairman and CEO. Turns out, never was just another thing they were wrong about. I walk to the boardroom with my head high. Some people are born to lead. Others have to prove it. I did both. I learned early that being the youngest meant being invisible. At 7 years old, I sat outside Dad's office while he met with investors. My sister Jessica, 12 at the time, would waltz in with questions about the business. Dad would smile, answer patiently, explain market strategies to her. When I knocked with my own questions, he'd say, "Not now, Emily. This is complicated." By high school the pattern was set. Jessica was groomed for leadership. Business camps, networking events, finance internships. I got piano lessons and art classes. Every family needs balance, Mom would say, which I understood to mean, "Jessica's the achiever, you're the creative one." I stopped trying to join business conversations around age 16. Instead I listened. I absorbed everything they discussed at dinner. Profit margins, expansion strategies, investor relations, market positioning. I just never contributed. Dad ran a commercial real estate development firm. Nothing massive but successful. $30 million in annual revenue, 23 employees, solid reputation in the Midwest. Jessica joined right after college and everyone assumed she'd take over eventually. I went to school for finance. Nobody in my family attended my graduation. Jessica's promotion party was the same weekend. She'd made VP of operations at 26. That took priority. "You understand, honey," Mom said on the phone. "This is Jessica's big moment. Your graduation is just, well, you know." I understood perfectly. After graduation I took a position at Goldman Sachs in New York. Low-level analyst work initially, but I was good with numbers. Very good. I could see patterns in market data that others missed, identify undervalued opportunities, predict shifts before they happened. My family never asked about my work. When I visited for holidays, conversations revolved around Jessica's latest deals, the company's expansion plans, industry challenges. If anyone asked about my job, it was perfunctory. Still doing the finance thing? Dad would ask, already turning back to Jessica. I'd simply nod. Still doing the finance thing. What I didn't mention, I'd made partner by 29. My portfolio management generated $847 million in returns over 3 years. I specialized in strategic investments in mid-sized family businesses exactly like Dad's company. And I'd been watching our family business very carefully. By 32, I'd accumulated significant personal wealth through careful investments and aggressive saving. I lived modestly in Brooklyn, drove a 10-year-old Honda, wore clothes from Target. My family assumed I was barely getting by in expensive New York City. Must be hard making ends meet there, Uncle John said once, with a sympathetic head shake that barely concealed his satisfaction. I manage, I'd replied simply. What he didn't know, I had $180 million in liquid assets and controlled investment positions in 17 companies worth over $2 billion combined. 3 years ago, Dad's company hit rough waters. A development deal in Cincinnati fell through, costing them $8 million. Their credit lines were stretched, cash flow tight. They needed capital fast or they'd lose everything. Jessica called me for the first time in 2 years. Emily, Dad's in trouble. We need to borrow some money. Maybe $20,000? Just temporarily. I heard the condescension even in her desperation. $20,000. Like I was a piggy bank to be cracked in emergencies. I don't have that kind of cash available, I lied. But I know some investors who might be interested in helping. Really? Her relief was palpable. That would be amazing. Can you connect us? I connected them to my firm. Not as Emily Thompson family member, but through several intermediary entities. The deal was structured through MT Capital Holdings, my personal investment vehicle named with my middle and last name initials, nothing obviously connected to me. We provided $50 million in capital. In exchange, we took a 60% equity stake and majority control of the board. The family kept operational control and generous salaries, but all major decisions required board approval. My approval, though they didn't know it. Dad and Jessica were thrilled. They'd saved the company, maintained their positions, and could continue running things day to day. The investors, faceless entities to them, seemed hands-off and reasonable. We did it, Jessica announced at Christmas that year. We saved the company. Found some investors who believed in our vision. Everyone congratulated her brilliant business acumen. I smiled from my seat at the kids' table. Yes, at 30 I still sat at the kids' table and said nothing. For 3 years I watched through quarterly reports and board minutes. The company stabilized, then grew. Revenue hit $45 million annually. They expanded into 3 new markets. Jessica took full credit for the turnaround. I restructured everything, she'd tell people at family gatherings. Brought in capital, reorganized operations, positioned us for growth. Dad's teaching me well. I'd nod along, sipping wine, asking no questions. My family's view of me remained unchanged. I was still Emily, the artsy one who did something with finance in New York but probably wasn't very successful. After all, I drove that old Honda when I visited. Wore the same unremarkable clothes year after year. Never talked about big deals or important clients. Jessica, meanwhile, arrived in a new Mercedes every holiday, wore designer everything, talked constantly about her business triumphs. She'd recently gotten engaged to Marcus, a corporate lawyer she described as a real heavy hitter. You should try to meet someone successful like Marcus, she told me once, her voice dripping with sisterly concern. I know it's hard in your position, but there are plenty of nice middle management guys in New York. I'll keep that in mind, I replied evenly. This Thanksgiving, the family gathered at my parents' house in Indianapolis. 37 people, aunts, uncles, cousins, plus Jessica's fiancé and his parents. A celebration of abundance and success. I arrived in my Honda carrying a store-bought pie, wearing a simple navy dress from Target. Jessica arrived in her Mercedes, bringing artisanal wine and stories of her latest $12 million deal. Dinner was the usual hierarchy. Dad at the head of the table, Mom to his right, Jessica beside her with Marcus. Uncle John, Dad's brother and company sat nearby with Aunt Marie. I was seated between two teenage cousins who spent dinner on their phones. The conversation naturally centered on business. We're looking at a major expansion into Columbus, Dad announced. $40 million development. Shopping complex and residential towers. It's going to transform our portfolio, Jessica added, her voice confident. I've been negotiating with the city for 6 months. This is the deal that takes us to the next level. So proud of you, sweetheart, Mom beamed. Such a brilliant businesswoman. Uncle John raised his glass. To Jessica, future CEO of Thompson Development. Everyone drank. I sipped my wine quietly. The financing is almost locked in, Jessica continued. We're closing a $40 million credit line next week. The bank loves our growth trajectory. Marcus squeezed her hand. My brilliant fiancée. She's going to run a $100 million company by 35. More congratulations. More toasts. I remained silent, cutting my turkey into precise pieces. Emily, you're awfully quiet, Aunt Marie said with forced politeness. How's your little job going? It's going well, thank you. Still doing the analyst thing? Uncle John asked. He'd asked me the same question for a decade. Something like that. Jessica laughed, a sound like wind chimes designed to seem pleasant but actually grating. Emily doesn't like talking about work. It's fine. Not everyone needs to be in business. The world needs artists and creative types too. I'm in finance, I corrected mildly. Right. Finance. Though I never quite understood what you actually do. He turned to Marcus. Emily works for some firm doing. What is it exactly? Paperwork. Investment management. That sounds complicated, Marcus said in the tone you'd use with a child explaining their crayon drawing. Jessica handles our investments. Made us $200,000 last quarter alone through her company stock options. Impressive, I said simply. The conversation moved on. Business strategies, market opportunities, the Columbus deal's specifics. I listened to Jessica describe financing structures, clearly getting several technical details wrong. Nobody corrected her. She was the golden child. Everything she said was brilliant by default. After dinner, the adults gathered in Dad's study for drinks. The important people room where serious discussions happened. I'd never been invited, but this year I followed anyway, wine glass in hand. Dad looked surprised to see me. Oh, Emily. We're going to talk business. Might be boring for you. I don't mind, I said, taking a seat in the corner. Jessica exchanged glances with Uncle John, a silent communication I'd seen thousands of times. Just ignore her, she'll get bored and leave. They continued their discussion. The Columbus deal, expansion plans, projections for hitting $60 million in revenue within 2 years. We'll need additional capital after the Columbus project, Uncle John said. Another $30 million for the Cleveland opportunity. The credit line covers Columbus, Dad said. We can leverage that success to secure Cleveland financing. Our investors have been hands-off, Jessica added. MT Capital hasn't interfered at all. They're just collecting their dividends. Perfect situation. I sipped my wine, face neutral. We should consider buying them out eventually, Marcus suggested. He was apparently part of the business discussions now, future family and all. Take back full control. You don't need outside money anymore. That's brilliant, Jessica said, looking at him adoringly. We're strong enough now. Why keep giving equity returns to some faceless corporation? Would they sell their stake? Uncle John asked. Everyone has a price, Dad said confidently. We'll approach them next year. Offer them a solid return and get our company back completely. They all nodded, pleased with this plan to erase the investors who'd saved them from bankruptcy 3 years ago. Family business should stay in the family, Uncle John declared. Always has been, always will be. I set my wine glass down. What about me? Silence. Jessica blinked. What about you? You said family business should stay in the family. I'm family. Uncle John's laugh was uncomfortable. Well, yes, technically. But this is about people involved in the actual business, Emily. No offense. None taken. I'm just clarifying who counts as family. You know what he means, Jessica said, her tone patient in that infuriating way. People who actually understand business. Who've built this company. Not. She gestured vaguely at me. Not. Stay out of real business discussions, Jessica laughed, looking around the room for support. Everyone smiled awkwardly. This is complicated stuff. Financing structures, equity stakes, corporate strategy. It's not really your world. Uncle John smirked, emboldened by Jessica's dismissal. Know your place, Emily. We love you, but business isn't for everyone. You're creative, that's wonderful. Let us handle the boring corporate stuff. I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip. Nodded once. Understood. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Richard Chin, president of National Commerce Bank, returning my call from earlier. I stood phone in hand. Excuse me. I need to take this. Of course, Jessica said absently, already turning back to Dad. Now about the Cleveland timeline. I stepped into the hallway, answered the phone. Richard, thanks for calling back. Miss Thompson, good to hear from you. You mentioned needing to discuss the Thompson development account. Yes. I'm reviewing my portfolio allocations. The $40 million credit line for Thompson Development. I'd like you to freeze it immediately. Brief pause. That's a significant line. May I ask the reason? Strategic reallocation. I'm considering withdrawing my backing entirely. Please halt the credit line and prepare documentation for full loan recall. I'll need it ready by Monday morning. Understood. Though I should mention this will significantly impact their Columbus project. Without that credit line. I'm aware of the implications. Please proceed. Of course. I'll handle it personally. Anything else? Yes, actually. I'd like to review all accounts where Thompson Development is listed as beneficiary or guarantor. Prepare a complete portfolio analysis. I may be withdrawing support across multiple positions. This is regarding the 60% equity stake through MT Capital as well? Potentially. I haven't decided yet whether to retain control or liquidate entirely. We'll discuss Monday. I'll have everything ready. Have a good evening, Ms. Thompson. I lowered the phone, aware that absolute silence had fallen in the study behind me. I turned. Every face stared at me. Jessica's mouth hung open. What was that? I looked at her calmly. A business call. Complicated stuff. Not really your world. You were talking about Thompson Development, Uncle John said slowly. About a $40 million credit line. Was I take so many calls they blur together. Dad stood face pale. Emily, what did you just do? My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Excuse me again. This is my investment firm. I answered. Hello, Patricia. Patricia Mondavi, managing director at Goldman Sachs and my direct report, spoke quickly. Emily, I got your message about Thompson Development. You want to review the entire position? Yes. I'm considering withdrawing all capital. Can you prepare the documentation? That's $50 million in direct investment plus guarantees on another $60 million in leveraged positions. Total exposure around $110 million. If we withdraw, the company collapses. I know. Please prepare the paperwork anyway. I'll decide over the weekend. This is unusual for you. You typically don't pull out of stable positions. Is there a problem with the company performance? No, the company's fine. This is personal. Understood. I'll have everything ready. Should I coordinate with Richard at National Commerce? Yes, please. He's freezing their credit line. We'll need to present a unified position. They're going to be devastated. That company can't survive losing you as primary backer. I'm aware. Thank you, Patricia. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. I ended the call. The study remained utterly silent. Jessica found her voice first, barely above a whisper. Primary backer? I sat back down, picked up my wine glass. You were saying something about Cleveland? Please continue. Emily. Dad's voice shook. What is happening right now? Business discussion. I thought you wanted me to stay out of those. The bank president called you Ms. Thompson, Uncle John said, his face ashen. About our credit line. About our company. I said nothing, just sipped my wine. Jessica's hands trembled. MT Capital. Oh my God. That's you. MT Capital is you. I don't know what you mean. Middle name Marie. Last name Thompson. MT Capital. She couldn't finish the sentence. My phone buzzed a third time. I showed them the screen. Stephen Park, MT Capital Board Chairman. Actually my corporate attorney, but they didn't need those details. I answered on speaker. Stephen. Emily, I received notice you're considering withdrawing from Thompson Development. The board needs to discuss this. That's a significant position. I'm aware. Their Q4 numbers are excellent. Revenue up 23%. The Columbus deal is solid. Why would we pull out now? Personal reasons. That's not like you. You're the most rational investor I know. What changed? I looked directly at Jessica. I was recently reminded that family business should stay in the family. And that I'm not really family. Just creative types who should know their place. Stephen's pause was heavy. Someone said that to you? About Thompson Development. Multiple someones actually. At Thanksgiving dinner. Just now. The same Thompson Development where you hold 60% equity? Where you've personally guaranteed $60 million in loans? Where you're the sole reason they survived 2021? The very same. And they don't know you're the primary investor? They do now. His sigh was audible. Emily, I understand you're upset, but destroying a company over dinner conversation? I haven't decided to destroy anything. I'm simply reviewing my options. If I choose to withdraw, that's standard portfolio management. It would bankrupt them. You know that. Then they should have been more careful about who they dismissed at family gatherings. I ended the call. Jessica had gone white. You can't. This is a joke. Some kind of prank. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned the screen toward them. My personal account. $184,293,847.62. Uncle John made a choking sound. I swiped to another app showing my investment portfolio. Total value, $2.1 billion across all holdings. This isn't possible, Dad whispered. It's extremely possible. Turns out I was very good at that little finance job nobody asked about. Marcus had turned red. You're saying you own Thompson Development? 60%. Controlling interest. Every major decision for the last 3 years required my approval. Well, my board's approval, but I am the board. Why? Jessica's voice broke. Why would you do this? Do what? Invest in a struggling family business? Save it from bankruptcy? Provide the capital that funded your entire turnaround? Generate the returns that paid your salary and bonuses for 3 years? Which part seems unreasonable? You let us think. I let you think what you wanted to think. I never lied about my work. You just never asked. You assumed the youngest daughter in the Target dress couldn't possibly be successful. Dad sank into his chair. The Columbus deal. The credit line. If you freeze it, the deal collapses. You lose the deposit, probably around $3 million. Your credibility with the city disappears. Future development opportunities in Columbus evaporate. You can't do this to us, Uncle John said, but his voice had no strength. I can do exactly this. I'm your primary investor, majority shareholder, and board chair. I can do whatever I want with my investment. Jessica's face crumpled. We're family. Are we? 5 minutes ago, I wasn't family enough for business discussions. I was just the creative type who should know her place. We didn't mean. You meant every word. You've meant it for 32 years. Every dismissal, every condescending smile, every time you talked over me or excluded me or treated me like the family charity case. You meant all of it. My phone rang again. Richardson. I answered. Miss Thompson, the credit line is officially frozen. I've sent notification to Thompson Development's corporate counsel. The documentation for full loan recall will be ready Monday morning as requested. Thank you, Richard. I should mention, without that credit line, they're in breach of several covenant agreements with other lenders. This could trigger cascading defaults across their entire financing structure. I'm aware. Their business will be insolvent within 90 days if you proceed. I'll take that under advisement. Thank you for your quick action. I ended the call. Every face stared at me with varying expressions of shock, horror, and dawning comprehension. 90 days, Dad repeated numbly. We'll lose everything in 90 days. Unless I choose to maintain the credit line. Which I haven't decided yet. Jessica stood abruptly. This is insane. You're going to destroy Dad's company, your own family's company, because we hurt your feelings. I'm considering withdrawing from an investment that has become emotionally complicated. That's just good business practice. You'd do the same if your investors treated you with contempt. We didn't know. Would it have mattered? If I'd told you 5 years ago I was successful, would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed I was delusional? Silence answered that question. Marcus, attempting to salvage something, stepped forward. Miss Thompson, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss terms. Terms? Like the terms where you suggested buying me out to get rid of the faceless corporation? Those terms. His face reddened again. Uncle John found some anger. You've been lying to us for 3 years. Hiding behind shell companies, manipulating. I've been quietly saving your company while you dismissed my existence. I never lied once. I answered every question honestly. You just never asked the right questions because you couldn't imagine I might be worth asking. What do you want? Dad's voice was defeated. Tell us what you want. I stood, set down my wine glass. I want to finish my Thanksgiving pie in peace. I'll review my investment position over the weekend and let you know my decision Monday morning. Emily, please, Jessica started. Oh, one more thing. I turned at the doorway. Marcus, you mentioned Jessica made $200,000 last quarter through company stock options? Those options were granted by the board. My board. I approved your compensation package personally. You're welcome. I walked out, leaving them in shattered silence. The weekend was surprisingly peaceful. I ignored 47 phone calls from family members. I deleted 33 voicemails without listening. I did read Jessica's text messages, though. Watching them evolve from angry to desperate to pleading was grimly satisfying. Saturday morning, you're being ridiculous and cruel. Saturday afternoon, Dad had a panic attack. Are you happy? Saturday evening, please, Emily. We can fix this. Just call me. Sunday morning, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Please don't destroy the company. Sunday evening, we'll do anything. Just tell us what you want. I didn't respond to any of them. Monday morning I called Patricia at the firm. Let's restructure the Thompson development position. You're not pulling out? No. But things are changing. Here's what I want. I laid out the new terms. Patricia was silent for a long moment. That's aggressive. That's proportional. Draft the documents. They're going to fight this. They're in no position to fight anything. Their credit line is frozen, their loan covenants are breached, and they're 90 days from insolvency. They'll accept whatever terms keep them alive. True. I'll have the papers ready by this afternoon. I called Richard next, then Stephen, then 3 other board members. By noon everything was arranged. At 2 p.m. I received confirmation. Thompson Development had received the new investment terms and had 48 hours to accept or reject. Rejection meant immediate withdrawal of all capital and financial collapse. Jessica called at 2:07 p.m. I answered. Emily. Her voice was raw. We got the documents. Good. These terms, you're gutting us. I'm restructuring our relationship to reflect reality. Read them carefully. The new terms were straightforward. I maintained 60% equity and controlling board position, but operational control now required my approval on any decision over $50,000. All major hires, all contracts, all expansion plans needed my signature. Jessica's salary was cut from $340,000 to $120,000. Uncle John's salary was cut from $280,000 to $95,000. Dad could remain as CEO but in advisory capacity only. Marcus was barred from any involvement in company decisions. Additionally, I would be recognized publicly as the primary investor and board chair. No more hiding behind MT Capital's anonymity. Every company document, every press release, every public statement would acknowledge my role. You're taking over completely, Jessica said. No. You can still run daily operations. But every significant decision goes through me. And everyone will know I'm the one who saved this company. Dad will never accept this. Then Dad can preside over bankruptcy proceedings. The terms are non-negotiable. You're destroying everything he built. He destroyed it himself in 2021. I rebuilt it. Now everyone gets to know the truth. We're family, Emily. Then start treating me like it. You have 48 hours to decide. I ended the call. Tuesday at noon I received the signed documents. They'd accepted every term without modification. Wednesday I drove to Indianapolis for the emergency board meeting. My first time attending in person rather than through proxies. I walked into the conference room wearing a Dior suit, carrying a Bottega Veneta bag, every inch the successful executive I'd always been but never showed them. Dad, Jessica, and Uncle John sat on one side of the table. They looked like they'd aged 5 years in 5 days. I took my seat at the head of the table. Good morning. Let's begin with Q4 projections. The meeting lasted 4 hours. I asked detailed questions, challenged every assumption, pointed out the flaws in their Columbus timeline and Cleveland projections. I demonstrated exactly how much I knew about their business, more than they did in many cases. By the end, they'd agreed to my revised strategy, accepted my operational oversight, and acknowledged my authority. One final item, I said as we concluded. Family gatherings. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays. Jessica looked up warily. I'll continue attending. I'll sit at the adults' table from now on. And business discussions include me, not as the quiet observer but as an active participant. Given that I control the majority of this family's financial stability, that seems appropriate. Of course, Dad said quietly. Also, the narrative changes. No more stories about Jessica single-handedly saving the company. The truth is I saved it. He operates it. Those are different things and everyone needs to understand the distinction. People will ask questions, Uncle John said. About where you got the money, how you built your career without anyone knowing. Then you'll answer honestly, you never asked. You assumed I was unsuccessful because I didn't perform success the way you expected it to look. That assumption was your failure, not mine. They nodded, defeated. I stood, gathering my materials. The Columbus project moves forward. I'm releasing the credit line. But we're restructuring the deal with better terms. I'll send the revised proposal by Friday. Thank you, Jessica whispered. Don't thank me. This is business. I'm protecting my investment. That's all this has ever been. I walked out of Thompson Development headquarters. My headquarters now really, and drove back to New York. Thanksgiving next year was different. I arrived in a Tesla wearing Armani, carrying wine that cost more than the turkey. I was seated at the head table next to Dad. When business discussions started, they looked to me first. Emily, Dad said formally, what do you think about the Cleveland expansion timeline? I laid out my analysis. Everyone listened carefully, took notes, asked respectful follow-up questions. Jessica sat quietly, her confidence from previous years completely eroded. She'd become what I'd always been, the person in the room whose opinion didn't quite matter. Uncle John deferred to me on every significant point. Marcus, no longer welcome at business discussions, ate his dinner in silence. Later, as I prepared to leave, Jessica caught me alone in the hallway. You've changed, she said softly. No. You just finally see me clearly. I'm sorry. For everything. For all the years of dismissing you. I looked at her evenly. You're sorry you were wrong. That's not the same as being sorry for how you treated me. That's not fair. Neither was 32 years of condescension. But here we are. Are you going to punish me forever? I'm not punishing you at all. I'm running a business in which I'm the majority shareholder. Every decision I've made has been sound corporate governance. If that feels like punishment, perhaps examine why. She had no answer for that. I drove back to New York that night thinking about family, power, and perception. They'd spent 3 decades teaching me that I was less than them. Smaller, quieter, less important. They'd believed their own story so completely that they never questioned it, never looked deeper, never considered they might be wrong. The truth is, I could have told them years ago. I could have shown up in designer clothes, driven the luxury car, displayed my success like Jessica displayed hers. But I chose not to. Because I wanted them to value me for who I was, not what I had. I wanted them to respect me as a person, not as a portfolio. They failed that test completely. And now they lived with the consequences. Successful daughter Emily, the financial genius they never bothered to know, the investor who controlled their entire world. Know your place, Uncle John had said. I knew my place now. At the head of the table where I'd earned it. And they knew their place too, dependent on the family member they dismissed for 32 years, grateful for my continued generosity, aware that everything they had existed because I allowed it. That wasn't the justice I'd wanted as a child sitting outside Dad's office. But it was the justice I'd earned as an adult who'd built an empire in silence while they built assumptions on sand. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic. It's simply letting people discover they were wrong about you all along, and that their mistake cost them everything.